You look in the rearview mirror and the back seat is empty, but just 5 seconds ago, someone was there. You can smell that scent of damp earth. The seat is soaked. And on the window, there are handprints that weren't there before. Tonight, 3 drivers share the most terrifying rides of their lives. Trips they'll never forget. Passengers who should never have gotten into their vehicles. Are you ready? Because after hearing these stories, you'll never look at the back seat the same way again. Welcome to Untold Nightmares. Hi, I'm narrator's name, and tonight I have something special for you. We've all used an Uber or a taxi at some point. We get in, give the address, and trust that we'll get to our destination without any problems. It's such an everyday occurrence, so normal, that we never stop to think about how vulnerable that situation is. You're in a car with a complete stranger. Or worse yet, you're the driver, and you've just let someone into your space, without really knowing who or what they are. The 3 stories you'll hear tonight are true accounts of drivers who chose the wrong career path. Sarah, James, and a driver who prefers to remain anonymous shared their experiences with us. Experiences that have marked them forever. Before we begin, if you're new to the channel, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss any of our horror stories. And if you're feeling brave, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a strange experience in an Uber or taxi? Now then, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready. Because the journey is about to begin. I'll never forget the night of March 14th, 2019. I was working as an Uber driver outside Portland, and that morning I decided to accept rides until 3 a.m. to pay the rent due the next day. The rain pounded the windshield with hypnotic intensity, and the streets were practically empty. Around 2:30 a.m., I received a request from a residential area I didn't know well. The app displayed the name, Marcus, and a completely black profile picture. I thought it was odd, but not unusual. Many people don't update their profiles. I drove for 15 minutes through increasingly dark streets until I reached the address, a 2-story house with its lights off and an overgrown yard. I waited 5 minutes. No one came out. I was about to cancel when I saw a tall figure approach from the side of the house. He didn't come out the front door, but appeared from between the bushes. He walked strangely, with long, stiff strides, as if his knees were struggling to move. He opened the back door and sat down without saying a word. "Marcus?" I asked, looking in the rearview mirror. He didn't answer. His face was covered by a soaked hood, and he kept his head down. The smell emanating from him was nauseating, a mixture of damp earth and something sweet that made my stomach turn. "Are you okay, buddy?" I insisted. Absolute silence. The app showed the destination, a cemetery 20 minutes away. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I reminded myself that it wasn't my place to judge where people went. Maybe they worked there. Maybe they were visiting someone in the middle of the night. People do strange things when they're grieving. I started driving. The rain was getting heavier. For the first 10 minutes, nothing unusual happened, just that dense silence and the increasingly intense smell. I tried rolling down the window a little, but the chill that came in was unnatural, as if the air itself were sick. Then I heard it. Wet, labored breathing, as if he were breathing through water. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that his head was still down, but now his hands were resting on his knees. They were pale, almost gray, hands with long, dirty nails. Drops of water constantly fell from his clothes, soaking the back seat. "Are you sure you're okay?" I asked, feeling my voice tremble. This time he raised his head slowly, and although the darkness hid his features, I could see his eyes, completely white, without pupils, reflecting the dim light from the dashboard like the eyes of a nocturnal animal. My heart started racing. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to stay calm. "We're almost there." I lied, even though there were still 10 minutes left. I wanted to tell him to get out, to make up any excuse, but my instinct told me not to provoke him. Then he began to speak. Not exactly speak, but mutter in a language I didn't recognize. The words sounded ancient, guttural, as if his throat wasn't designed for human speech. The sound penetrated my ears, giving me an instant headache. I felt nauseous. I wanted to stop, but my hands felt welded to the steering wheel. Suddenly, everything stopped. The murmuring, the breathing, everything. I looked in the rearview mirror, and the back seat was empty. Completely empty. I slammed on the brakes, skidding on the wet asphalt. My car stopped in the middle of the deserted road. I spun around, scanning the back seat with my phone's flashlight. There was no one there. But the seat was soaked, completely soaked, and there were handprints on the window pane, as if someone had pushed hard trying to get out. Or get in. The most disturbing part came next. I checked the app, trembling. The ride was listed as canceled by passenger 3 minutes after I was supposed to get on. But I saw him get in. I felt his weight on the car. I smelled that scent of death. To this day, 3 years later, I no longer work as a night driver. But every time it rains, I can smell that combination of dirt and decay, and I feel like something is watching me from the back seat, waiting for me to take that job again. My name is Sarah Chen, and for 5 years I drove a night cab in a small town in Arizona. I knew every street, every shortcut, every dive bar. I thought I'd seen it all. Drunks, domestic disputes, people running from their own demons. But nothing prepared me for what happened in September 2020. It was a sweltering summer night, one of those where the asphalt still radiates heat at midnight. I was driving along Old Route 66, a desolate stretch no one uses anymore since the new highway was built. Around 1:45 a.m., I saw a figure on the side of the road. A woman in a white dress, signaling for me to stop. My first instinct was to keep going. That stretch has a reputation, urban legends about phantom hitchhikers and all that. But she seemed desperate, hopping from foot to foot, flailing her arms. What if she was hurt? What if she really needed help? I stopped a few feet away from her. I rolled down the window halfway and yelled, "Need a ride?" She came up fast, too fast, and before I could process what was happening, she was already in the back seat. I don't remember opening the door for her. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she repeated in a high-pitched, anxious voice. "I need to get to St. Mary's Hospital. It's urgent. My baby is sick." Her words tumbled over one another. I glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. She was young, maybe 25, with long, dark hair plastered to her face with sweat. But something about her eyes unsettled me. They were wide open, unblinking, fixed on some invisible point in front of her. "St. Mary's closed 10 years ago," I said gently. "But I can take you to the regional medical center. It's 20 minutes away." No, she insisted, her panic rising. "It has to be St. Mary's. Dr. Thompson is waiting for me. He promised. He said he'd save my baby." Her hands clutched something to her chest, wrapped in the white gown. I couldn't see what it was, but the way she rocked it back and forth made my stomach turn. I started driving toward where the hospital used to be, an abandoned building converted into a homeless shelter. I didn't know what else to do. Maybe there she would find someone who could help her, because clearly this woman needed more than a taxi. During the ride, she began to hum a lullaby. Her voice was melodious but broken, like a broken record. She rocked the bundle in her arms with mechanical, stiff movements. "We're almost there, my love," she whispered. "Dr. Thompson will fix you up. I promise." The air inside the taxi became thick, almost difficult to breathe. A sickly sweet smell began to permeate the space. I rolled the window down completely, but it didn't help. The smell seemed to be coming from her, from whatever she was carrying. "What's your baby's name?" I asked, trying to keep her grounded, or maybe trying to convince myself that this was normal, that I was just a desperate mother. "Michael," she replied tenderly. "My little Michael. He's only 3 weeks old. He was fine this morning, but then he started turning blue, so blue." Her voice broke. "Dr. Thompson will know what to do. He promised me he'd never leave us." We arrived at the abandoned St. Mary's building. The windows were broken, graffiti covered the walls, and a rusty chain blocked the main entrance. The woman leaned forward, pressing her face against the window. "This is it. This is it." Her voice was barely a whisper now. She opened the door and quickly stepped out. She walked toward the building with shaky steps, still cradling that bundle against her chest. She stopped in front of the chained entrance and began pounding on the metal door desperately. "Dr. Thompson. Dr. Thompson. I'm here. Please help my baby." Her screams echoed in the silent night, heartrending and filled with an anguish that chilled my blood. I got out of the taxi, not knowing what to do. "Ma'am, this place is abandoned. Please let me take you to the new hospital." I approached slowly, but when I was a few feet away from her, she turned to me. His face had changed. He no longer looked young. Deep wrinkles furrowed his skin. His sunken eyes stared through me, not at me. And what he was carrying, it wasn't a baby. It was a bundle wrapped in rotting cloth, stained with something dark that dripped slowly to the floor. "I'm late," he whispered. "I'm always late." Then he simply disappeared. He didn't walk into the shadows, he didn't run. He vanished like smoke, leaving only that stained package on the ground. I approached, trembling. I didn't want to look, but something compelled me. Inside the cloth was a small, old, faded baby shoe and a disintegrated photograph of a young woman holding an infant. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, "Michael, July 17th, 1987. Died on the way to St. Mary's." I ran back to my cab and drove nonstop until I reached the police station. I told them everything. They investigated. They found records of a woman named Rebecca Morrison who had tried to take her sick baby to St. Mary's in 1987. Her car broke down on Route 66. By the time she arrived walking with the baby in her arms, it was too late. They were both found dead 3 days later in the abandoned building where she had sought refuge. I stopped driving a taxi after that. But sometimes, when I drive near Route 66 at night, I see a figure in a white dress waving on the side of the road. And every time I see it, my radio starts transmitting static, and amid the white noise, I can hear a lullaby. My name is James Peterson, and what I'm about to tell you happened 2 years ago, but I still wake up sweating at night, checking addresses 2, 3, for times before accepting any career. I was an Uber driver on the outskirts of Chicago. One cold November night, around 11 p.m., I received a request from a man named David M. to drive me from downtown to an address in the suburbs. It was a long drive, which was great because I needed the money. I accepted immediately. I picked David up in front of a half-empty bar. He was a man in his 40s, well-dressed, carrying a leather briefcase and an expensive coat. He seemed tired but polite. "Good evening," he said as we entered. "Thank you for accepting the ride so late." "No problem," I replied. "Address 4738 Maple Street, correct?" He confirmed with a nod and settled into the back seat, taking out his phone to check messages. It seemed like a completely normal trip. I drove for 40 minutes, going deeper and deeper into less lit residential areas. The fog began to thicken, reducing visibility. David remained silent, which I appreciated. Not all passengers want to chat, and I'm not much of a talker either. When we arrived at the address, I realized something was wrong. It was a 2-story house, but it was completely dark, with an overgrown yard and a "for sale" sign visibly deteriorating with age. It didn't look like anyone had lived there in years. "Are you sure this is it?" I asked, turning to him. David was staring at the house, his face pale and his eyes glassy. "Yes," he murmured. "This is it." His voice sounded distant, hollow. "Do you want me to wait?" I offered, because the situation seemed strange to me. Why would anyone come to an abandoned house at this hour? He didn't answer. He simply opened the door and left, walking slowly toward the house with mechanical steps. He didn't turn around, didn't say thank you, didn't close the car door. I watched, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. David reached the front door and just stood there, staring in through the dark window. 2, 3 minutes passed. He didn't move. It was like staring at a statue. Finally, I decided to lock the door myself and leave. But when I got out of the car to close the back door, the house changed. The lights all came on at once, illuminating every window with a sickly yellow glow. I could hear music coming from inside, an old-fashioned melody, like from a broken music box. David remained motionless in front of the door. Then the door opened, although no one touched it. It slowly swung inward, revealing an interior that didn't match the abandoned exterior. Inside, a furnished room appeared, as if lived in, with photos on the walls and a table set for dinner. David walked in. He just walked in, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The door began to close behind him. But before it completely shut, I saw something that paralyzed me. Figures inside the house, dark silhouettes moving erratically, non-human in their motion. And they all turned simultaneously toward David. The door closed with a loud bang that echoed in the silent night. The lights went out all at once. The house returned to its previous state, dark, abandoned, dead. As if nothing had happened. As if what I had just witnessed had been a hallucination. I ran back to my car, my hands shaking so much I could barely hold the wheel. I sped back toward the city, constantly checking my rearview mirror, expecting to see David chasing me, or worse. The next day, I mustered up enough courage to report what had happened to the police. I went with them to the house. In daylight, it looked even more dilapidated. The police forced their way in. The interior was completely empty, covered in dust and cobwebs. There was no furniture, no photos, nothing to suggest anyone had been there in decades. There was no sign of David. But in the main room, they found something that made me vomit. Handprints on the walls, dozens of them, desperately scratched into the peeling paint, as if multiple people had been trying to escape something. And on the floor, written in dust, "Keep them out." Police investigated the property. The house had belonged to a family who mysteriously disappeared in 1976. David Morrison and his wife, Emily, along with their 3 children. The last time anyone saw them was on the night of November 4th, when neighbors reported hearing strange music coming from the house. The next day, the house was empty. No bodies were ever found. The case was never solved. David M. The name on my app that night. David Morrison. He'd disappeared 46 years before I picked him up at that bar. I checked the app obsessively for the next few days. David M.'s profile was gone. There were no payment records. The race didn't exist in my history. But the smell of old dust and something rotten lingered in my car for weeks, no matter how many times I cleaned it or perfumed it. Was it my imagination? I don't think so. Because 2 weeks later, I received another request. Same profile picture. Same name. David M. Same destination address. I immediately rejected it, blocking the user. But since then, every November 4th, at exactly 11 p.m., I receive that same request. And every year, I force myself to log out of the app before that time arrives. To this day, I wonder, what would have happened if I had agreed again? Would I have ended up inside that house with him? Would I have seen the other figures more closely? I don't want to know. There are some destinations you simply shouldn't take anyone to, no matter how much money they offer. 3 drivers. 3 journeys. 3 encounters with something that does not belong to our world. The Portland driver never worked nights again. Sarah left her cab for good. And James still gets that request every November 4th, reminding him that there are some destinations you just shouldn't go to. The next time you get into an Uber or a taxi, take a good look at your driver. Notice their eyes. Do they look tired? Scared? Like they've seen something they can't forget? Because maybe, just maybe, you're not the first strange passenger they've picked up that night. And if you're a driver, the next time someone gets into your car, ask yourself, did you really open the door? Did you really hear the door close? Because sometimes, what gets into the back seat never actually came down. This was Untold Nightmares. If these stories kept you up tonight, leave me a like and share this video with someone who needs a good dose of terror. In the comments, tell me, which of these 3 stories disturbed you the most? The missing passenger? The woman on Route 66? Or David Morrison, the man who'd been dead for 46 years? Remember to subscribe for more true horror stories every week. And if you'd like to support the channel, we have exclusive content on Patreon with longer stories and full interviews with witnesses of paranormal events. Before you go, let me leave you with one last thought. The Maple Street house was demolished in 2023. The lot is empty now. But neighbors say that every November 4th, at 11 p.m., they can still hear music coming from where the house used to stand. An old-fashioned melody, like a broken music box. And if you look close enough, you can see silhouettes in the windows that no longer exist. David Morrison is still looking for drivers willing to take him home. Until next time, drive carefully. And never, ever accept a ride to an abandoned house.